This is the 23rd of July 2025 today. The weather today was cool and cloudy in Singapore, with some occasional breeze and rain here and there. Definitely a good break from the hot and stifling summer that I experienced over the past few days. The topic for today is on this company called Miraxus, and I'm not quite sure if you guys have heard of Miraxus. This is a startup that was founded in Singapore and recently IPO'd in Hong Kong on the 15th of May 2025. It then became Singapore's first biomedical unicorn startup during its IPO, and its current valuation is around $900 million, so it fell a little bit. It is also widely seen as the poster child of Singapore-born biomedical startup, well, because it was the first unicorn. So Miraxus' main focus is on cancer detection, and in this episode, I will be talking about the founding team, company development story, product commercial performance, and future outlook. Miraxus is one of Singapore's top biotech success stories for sure, and this company embodies the spirit of both deep scientific innovation and somewhat a unique commercial vision. So it was founded in 2014 as a spin-off, from A-Star. And by the way, A-Star is a Singapore top research organization, and I think I'll talk about this in more detail in future episode about the translational research funnel in Singapore. So, going back to A-Star, back to Miraxus. Miraxus harnesses microRNA technologies for a variety of applications. Its flagship focus is to develop accurate, non-invasive diagnostic tests for early disease detection, starting with cancer. And GastroClear is the name of that product, which is the world's first approved molecular blood test for early detection of gastric cancer. Beyond diagnostic, Miraxus tries to apply RNA technologies to precision medicine. Their established R&D, manufacturing, and clinical partnership abilities suggest that the rate of innovation and product release might expedite in future, and it is definitely something that's exciting to look forward to. Now, maybe I should start with some of the key figures running the show in Miraxus. So, the story of Miraxus started in 2014. It was a 3-person founding team comprising of Dr. Zhou Lihan, Dr. Zhou Ruiyang, and Professor Tu Heng Poon. Miraxus and this 3-person team was described as an accidental entrepreneurship because all 3 co-founders were simply engrossed in microRNA research back in 2010. But the technology that we're working on just seems too valuable to not try to have a stab at commercializing it. So I guess in entrepreneurship lingo, this can be described as a product-driven, product-first approach, which in most schools, in most business schools, and most seasoned entrepreneurs and investors will advocate for the other approach, which is the market-driven and market-centric approach. But I think both models have their pros and cons, and I do believe that in biomedical and deep tech ventures, the tech and product-centric approach might also benefit a lot as opposed to the market-centric approach. Well, anyway, back to Dr. Zhou Lihan, who is the CEO of Miraxus and definitely the face and spokesperson of this company. He is quite an intriguing character because he exudes the vibe of both a technical nerd, a smooth business person, well, not both, I guess, a technical nerd, a business person, and also an affable, reliable person all at the same time. And I've seen quite a number of his videos, and to the listeners who are interested, I do recommend also tuning in to some of his interviews, which are really interesting. Most of his publications and patents are on microRNA panels and reagents, and his spending habits for Miraxus, or rather the way he allocates funding in Miraxus definitely shows his technical competency and R&D focus for the company. So while he might not have the commercialization and leadership skill back when it was a 3-person team, he seemed to have brushed up on those abilities, but still remain very grounded in the technical essentials. Then we've got the CTO, who is Dr. Zhou Ruiyang of Miraxus, and previously he was the head of bioinformatics at A-Star microRNA Signature Identification Center. His background was on bioinformatics, so he is definitely a calculation and algorithm guy. In the early days of the company, Dr. Zhou Ruiyang enabled predictive analysis of high-throughput microRNA signatures So he was likely a back-end and validation-focused person. So his background and bachelor's came from Nankai University in Tianjin, China, which gave him familiarity with business building in China. And so outside of leading the technical team, being just the CTO and managing R&D and engineering, he also takes the commercial leadership of developing the China market for Miraxus. Professor Tu Heng-poon was the PI of Dr. Zhou Lihan, the CEO, and he played the role of CSO for Miraxus when it was founded. I think right now he's still the advisor for Miraxus, and he was also a pioneer of Singapore's push towards biotechnology transformation back in year 2000. He remained in academia, but now he's an associate professor in NUS Yong Lu Lin School of Medicine. Now, so that was 2014. These three happy researchers decided to explore beyond academic world and establish Miraxus. But because they were so heavily technical focused, other members quickly joined the team to bridge some of the gaps in the ability. For instance, we've got Isaac Ho and Victoria Ouyang, who later joined Miraxus as the CIO, the Chief Investment Officer, I think, and the General Counsel. So on the overall, the leadership team is pretty lean actually. So how did Miraxus go from being just a small startup over to Southeast Asia's first biotech unicorn? In 2014, it formed as a spin-off from A-Star, and it continued operating as a venture unit still in Biopolis under A-Star. And in 2 years later, it caught the eye of VentureCraft, which invested, one of the earliest investors in Miraxus, and started supporting its commercialization and technology startup effort. And another 2 years passed where VentureCraft and Miraxus merged to create ARC, and that was in 2018. So ARC is an early detection medtech company focusing on cancer detection, and it quickly raised $40 million in Series A funding for Miraxus to expand on its clinical studies. So in the same year, a 5,000 patient clinical trial on gastric cancer was also completed. And just a year later, Miraxus finally launched its first product, which is called the GastroClear for cancer detection. It was launched with both the CE mark and HSA approval from Singapore. Both of them are important regulatory approval. And in the same year, it also entered the Chinese market. In 2020, a pandemic hit, which was pretty good for both biomedical companies because Miraxus was able to leverage on that to quickly produce the COVID-19 detection kit called the Fortitude kit, which was used globally. And at the same time, he also got money to construct its own facility and also expanded into Japan, called Miraxus Japan. Now, 2021, also during the COVID, it was one of the biggest years for Miraxus. Its Fortitude kit and GastroClear kit sales were increasing. It managed to raise $77 million funding in Series C. Its founders won the EY Entrepreneur of the Year award, and clinical validation results showed that Miraxus qPCR platform is superior to any other competition. So in the fundraising side, in the in industry recognition side, and also on clinical studies, Miraxus just won a lot of awards in 2021. Then this upwards trajectory kept going on in 2022 because Miraxus opened its Southeast Asia first Industry 4.0 IVD manufacturing facility at JTC Medical MedTech Hub. And it also in partnership with MGI, a massive biotech company in China. In 2023, Miraxus finally received FDA's breakthrough device designation for GastroClear product. It also got $50 million in Series D funding, and it announced its Hong Kong IPO intention. And finally, this year in 2025, Miraxus IPO'd in Hong Kong market, and well, it became Southeast Asia's first biotech unicorn. So similar to most biomedical startup journey, the first few years of Miraxus were focused on technology development, with fundings typically from bootstrapping or angel investment. But with the launch of the first product, global expansion and clinical trial follows because Singapore as a market is just too small to sustain a biomedical business. To go from technical heavy phase to product launch and commercialization, Miraxus took about 6 years. And with the product in the market, it started making noise in the market to drive product adoption and market discovery. Miraxus' flagship product is the GastroClear, which is the world's first microRNA-based blood test for early detection of gastric cancer. this product sells at about $250, which is 2x to 4x cheaper than any other alternatives. To listeners who might not be very familiar with the biomedical startup space, most of the products developed by these startups are quite technical heavy, so it might be difficult to avoid the science behind the products. Han, myself, was a biomedical device R&D person, so I'm not really an expert of Mirix's technology, which is quite heavy on the biochemistry aspect. But here's a simplified, summarized version. And perhaps in future we'll get a microRNA detection expert to do a deeper dive into the technology. So let's first talk about microRNA. So the shorthand written form of that is miRNA, but it's not read as miRNA, but rather it's microRNA. So please be careful if you see this term. I think most people who are familiar with the terms DNA, PCR, and RNA was because of COVID-19, and those terms were used a lot because the first RNA vaccine by Moderna was also fast-tracked and approved back then. But at the basic level, microRNA is RNA. But because RNA covers such a wide scope of length, functionality, and stability, microRNA is just a term used for a specific group of super short but super stable, or rather more stable RNA that are used in gene regulation. An interesting fact is that microRNA is relatively new in the field, and just last year in 2024, it won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, was awarded to Victor Ambros and Gary Ruvkun for their discovery of microRNA. So currently we know that the overexpression or underexpression of different microRNA are associated with various types of diseases, such as cancer or autoimmune diseases. So from the first microRNA discovery in 1993 to today, there are well over 2,000 different kinds of microRNA known. And of course, more microRNAs will be discovered over time, but just working with these known RNAs, different combination and different abundance can already be indicative of an individual's state of health. But since microRNA can potentially be used for disease detection, well, then there are a lot of questions actually to be asked before such a technology can be commercially available. So for example, if this microRNA can be used for diagnostic, how can the microRNA actually be detected? And what set of microRNA should we use as targets for what disease? That's also a problem for us to resolve. Now, how accurate, how reliable, how scalable across different races, genders, etc. We also need to verify that. And how do we triage the results into a diagnostic outcome is also a pressing issue. So there are actually a lot of different questions, and we haven't even covered the sample type, like does it come from saliva, blood, tissue? Is there different abundance in microRNA in those different sample types? So the number of uncertainties is quite overwhelming, and because of that, Mirix's being able to resolve all these technicalities, all these technical challenges within about 6 years to launch the GastroClear in that period of time is quite amazing actually. So the how to detect microRNA question is one of the core competency of Mirix's. Mirix's has a proprietary 3-primer system that allows for the detection of both the quantity and the type of microRNA present. The first primer is a stem loop reverse transcription primer that binds to the target microRNA and allows for reverse transcription. And this requires a little bit of visualization, but imagine a string that is hanging on the protruding needle. And for the string to hang on the needle, it will have naturally form a loop around the needle. But this loop is of uneven length. So one end of the string is a little bit shorter and the other end is protruding. And so basically the protruding part of the string of the stem loop DNA is used for binding with the target microRNA, and this enables reverse transcription. Well, this is the first part of the workflow because after reverse transcription, the cDNA, which is the complementary DNA, is then cleaved at the loop part, and this allows us to get a single-stranded non-loop cDNA. Then the last part of the workflow is to add forward and reverse primers, which are specially designed to be specific to the original target microRNA sequence, which triggers a qPCR along with a temperature cycling and fluorescence probe addition reaction. This then gives us the fluorescence signal that we can detect. And from this fluorescence signal, we can detect abundance of the type of different microRNAs that we are looking for. This workflow is a little bit special because the reverse transcription part and the qPCR part allows for very precise quantification and qualification of microRNA. In fact, with this triple probe design, let's call this the triple probe design, they can get extremely high specificity even with just trace amount of the target microRNA, which is really quite unbelievable because in this field, if you can detect with very high specificity at very low levels at trace amount of what you're trying to detect, then this is quite a game changer. And so with that, Miraxus is able to achieve microRNA detection down to about 1 picogram input. And any listeners who like to see a visual representation of qPCR, I've included a link in the description below. With this detection method, the GastroClear selected and measures a panel of 12 gastric cancer-associated microRNA from just 5 microliter of blood. And Miraxus put a lot of work and study into triaging how these different microRNA detection data actually correlate with actual disease diagnostic. And so they were able to develop their proprietary algorithm of telling you, hey, you actually do have this disease, or you do not have this disease. So while we might never know how Miraxus triage microRNA data into diseases, clinical validation involving over 5,000 patients across Singapore and Korea demonstrated sensitivity of 87.5% for stage 1 and 89.5% for stage 2 gastric cancer, which is actually a new benchmark in early detection. For listeners who are into investing, the commercial performance of Miraxus might also be interesting. With this product in the market, how did the market actually respond? Personally, I wouldn't call its business performance spectacular. In 2022, revenue was $18 million with a net loss of $57 million. And then in 2023, revenue grew to $24 million, but net loss also grew by a lot to $69 million. And last year, in 2024, revenue actually dropped to $20 million. And net loss exploded to $92 million. So going to 2025, the company was actually quite short of cash. But in late 2024 and I think early 2025, it got an injection of $40 million from CBC Asset Management. And it raised IPO of $112 million. So that should buy Miraxus another 2 years of runway. The money raised in the recent money raise will be used on commercial expansion and more R&D work for product release. I think there's a running consensus in the biomedical startup space that diagnostic space is probably the easiest to fail. And so despite Miraxus' successes in technical product launch, their commercial and financial positions still struggle. $20 million of revenue is really just 2% of its unicorn valuation. Biomedical field, enterprise value to revenue ratio is typically 5x to 10x for mature companies, and for recently IPO companies, that should be around 20x to 30x. Miraxus is running at about 50x, so that's pretty high. Recently, post-COVID-19, the bulk of the revenue actually comes from Miraxus' flagship product, which is the GastroClear. Singapore is used as the base for international sales and distribution, while Miraxus China operates almost uniquely by itself in the China market. The decision to double down on APAC plus China is quite different from any other biomedical startup's vision, which is penetrating straight into the US and European market. So I think Miraxus' strategy might be quite difficult to execute. And in 2024, China actually represents just a quarter of Miraxus' revenue at around $6 million. I think the gamble is that once regulatory approval in China is cleared, the revenue numbers in China will explode. And I think the latest news in May 2025 suggests that this strategy might finally be paying off. We do not have the exact numbers, but from what I could see, China sale has now outpaced the rest of APAC for Miraxus. So I think 2025 commercial performance will be very crucial. And if Miraxus achieve a revenue of about $30 million or more, then it can start to justify its unicorn valuation. But do take note that it's not just the revenue numbers, but also the distribution of revenue sources, because this gives us an idea of how this unicorn might be galloping into the future. Alright, so there you have it, Singapore's first biomedical unicorn startup, Mirexus, and its story. So on one side, it is a story of spectacular success in overcoming various technological and clinical hurdles necessary for product launch. But on the flip side, it shows the stark reality of how challenging and time-consuming it can be to change markets' behavior. With breakthrough products in the biomedical space, it is not easy to build a unicorn and might be even more difficult to remain as a unicorn. So thank you very much for tuning into this episode of Lune, and I hope that you enjoy this story about Mirexus as much as I do. If you have any thoughts about Mirexus, do leave a comment. See you in the next one. Thank you for listening to this episode of Lune, brought to you by Han, the host and founder of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to be part of any company or business initiative. Rather, it is driven by curiosity and belief that biomedical startups are reshaping our healthcare ecosystem for the better. So I hope to better articulate the works and impacts of this startup to the world. I will appreciate it if you can subscribe to this channel and its content, which are available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. If you have any thoughts and topic of interest, feel free to leave a comment. Bye bye.